And good morning and welcome to the New Zealand Open Canoe Slalom Championships for 2022 at the Wero Whitewater Arena in Auckland. Very difficult conditions for the athletes today. We've got a cyclone forecast to come in later in the day, but I think we're going to be all right. The Chief Judge, Kelly Bailey, has said that the conditions are acceptable to start the race, and we'll be assessing after each class. So this also doubles as selection races 3 and 4 for the New Zealand team. So we're going to see some very, very good racing. Unfortunately, with the current COVID situation in the world, we don't have many international athletes competing. And as we look up there, we'll be starting with the ladies K1. We'd like to thank our sponsors, of course, the International Canoe Federation, Grassroots Trust, and Wero, as well as all the other supporters who we'll see as the filming goes on and the event we build into it. Pandy, do you want to say a few things about today's race and the lead-up work that's gone in?
Oh, I just think we're really grateful to be able to be racing in the current climates, especially with everyone at red around the country, and still able to operate within the 100-person limit. And despite the weather, we got in some good racing yesterday, and really looking forward today. And just fingers crossed we can get right through, because we're actually doing extreme this afternoon, aren't we, Ian? So.
Yeah, of course, extreme. We had New Zealand's Finn Butcher made a bit of a name for himself in extreme this season, and it's an Olympic sport in Paris. So New Zealand blessed with a lot of white water, a lot of good natural rivers, and some very, very talented white water paddlers. So those guys will have that focus on their horizon. As we said, as Pandy referred to, we had the qualification runs yesterday. Everybody got to race. Now we're into the semi-finals and finals, the hot end of the competition. Should be pretty interesting. Only 100 people. We don't have a lot of spectators. A lot of parents haven't been able to come into the event and support their kids. So hopefully they'll get a chance to see a bit of this at home.
And Ian, do you maybe want to explain to some of the viewers about extreme and the ramp we'll be using this afternoon?
Well, we were just before I came here, Pandy, actually, we were just having a discussion. We may not be using the ramp, which is one of the more spectacular parts of extreme, and we'll get to that in the afternoon. But here we go. We've started with the slalom athletes, and we have, who do we have on the course now? We have one of our young up-and-coming, Isabella Bloor from Tauranga. She's on the course, and this is a true international course. It's a very demanding course for some of these young junior paddlers who don't have a huge amount of experience, and you'll see they'll fight the water, whereas we move through the field, the athletes are reverse seated. The less experienced will start earlier, and we'll move into the likes of Luca Jones, who will be the last runner on the course, New Zealand's top ranked athlete. Of course, we're ranked number 2 in the world last year. So we'll see her, and she'll put on a fine display. And as we go through each of the features on the river gets called a name, and this move here, this wave's called the chicken wing, between gates 8 and 9, and the athletes need to use that whitewater pillow to get their boats across. And looks like young Rosie Rex has started on the course as well. So these are some of our young up-and-coming athletes. So yeah, young Rosie doing quite a nice job. Now, just for those people who may have just casually flicked on, seen the screen, the sport of canoe slalom, it's a race down the course. The course is designated by 22 gates today. They must negotiate them in gate order. The ones with the green and white poles you must do in a in an Eskimo-tage. Eskimo roll there, fine example. All the athletes are very skilled at that. Now we've got 2 athletes vying at gate 11. The slower athlete is required to give away to the faster athlete, so obviously young Isabella Bloor had a few problems on that course. She may have done a roll herself, self-rescue. As I was saying, so we do the course in numerical order, down from 1s to 22. The gates that are green and white you do in a downstream direction. Those with a red and white coloured pole you do in an upstream direction. And so that's against the flow. But if you look very carefully, you'll see on the sides of the river, the flow is actually going back upstream in the eddy. So the skill is being able to transfer that downstream speed into the upstream speed. And here's a good example, and they're going to get into that side, and you'll see the boat start to get pushed up by the white water now. And they've got to get out over that white water pillow. Probably want to be leaning a little bit more forward if they can. And that was a nice job. So as I said, we'll see the less experienced athletes earlier on, and the more experienced athletes as the event continues in. The order of events for today will be women's kayak. That's where the paddlers are using the double-bladed paddle and they're sitting in the boat. Then we'll have the C1, the Canoe 1, where the athletes are actually kneeling down and only use one blade. Quite a different class, a different, more dynamic paddling style. We'll go into the women's C1, and then we'll go into the men's kayak. And the men's kayak will be a great race, I'm thinking, with Callum Gilbert and Finn Butcher, separated by less than half a second yesterday in the qualifications. Up for grabs, of course, the #1 spot in the New Zealand selection ranking, so it's going to look good. These young girls are doing a great job though. And you'll see on the side the man holding his hand up, if you're watching the screen, he's one of the judges. So each gate will have 2 judges. If the paddlers touch a pole with either their boat, body or paddle, they will incur a 2-second time penalty that's added on at the end of the run. Making things very difficult for the judges today is the amount of wind swing on the poles. So the gates are automatically moving, so they have to watch very carefully. And sometimes we have what's called a water touch, where and here's Gabby Lola here, the local hope from Tamaki Paddle Sports. So Gabby's just one of the local athletes who's just taken up the sport recently. She's been progressing very, very nicely. Let's see how she goes. And the restricted crowd numbers will certainly affect her. She has one of the biggest followings of all the athletes on a course. And in front of her we have Zeta Lakner, the Hungarian who's moved to New Zealand. Look at Gabby using that water well. She's very, very experienced on this course. She won't get too phased here. So the athletes can take whatever routes they want to get all the gates. Gabby's just setting herself up again. Lovely line. She'll use this water to get across. This is one of the classic, that's the best we've seen that done all day. Yeah, she's not afraid of the whitewater. She spends a lot of time out here on it. Gabby looking very strong. Getting thrown around a little bit in that section. It is quite an intense section, the 10, 11, 12 section. So will she be able to get her boat turned back from 12 to 13 without hitting the bollards, the plastic barrels on the side of the course? Yes, Gabby's looking strong. Doing a good job, the local Tamaki Paddle Sports paddler. Of course, one of her great influences is Luca Jones, a great role model to many of our young athletes, and beautiful entry into the upstream. This is looking like a good run she's building into. Just a junior athlete, still a junior, always smiling. And then we'll get from 18, 19, 20, 21, the main wave, the big drop on the river. The athletes are tired, they want to stay online, they don't want to make a mistake down there or they're going to expend a lot of energy and lose a lot of time. As I was saying, the athletes, if they touch the poles, they do incur a 2-second penalty. If they fail to negotiate the gates, look at this as we zoom back into 817, lovely upstream. And now we have Kate Hawthorne. Looks like we're looking at Kate Hawthorne. Top of the course. As we move around, we can see a bit of rain on the lens. The weather here is borderline for holding the race. It's very, very windy, very gusty. As I said, we've got a cyclone on the horizon. Luckily, the nor'easter wind we're currently experiencing does not affect the course overly much. Number 11, Grace Dooney from Hawke's Bay on the course. So a couple of strong Hawke's Bay paddlers are here. We've got a very strong contingent of young girls actually, with Grace and Eva and Jamie Wilson will be paddling a little bit later in the under 23 class, but that's great. And Grace's father Phil actually won a World Championships medal in Whitewater downriver racing. So good pedigree in that family, and I think her grandfather also represented New Zealand in sprint racing, so very strong background. And I know Grace was planning to do the coast to coast, but unfortunately the weathers and the Omicron situation has meant that event's had to be curtailed as well. Oh, look at that, nice and high by Grace. Perhaps too high, she'll have to reverse down now. Quite a challenge. And as we look at the course now, the wind, which we were very worried about, hasn't played too big a factor so far, but we're just going to assess after each run apparently. I've had the word from the Chief Judge that they'll look to make sure that the race is fair and the gates are in the positions they're supposed to be. with the wind blowing them to an alternate position, it can affect an athlete's run. And that's Eva Romberg. She's just down in front of Grace Sturdy. And now we have paddler number 9 on the course. That's young Pippi Ull. Pippi Ull racing for Canoe Slalom Bay of Plenty, a very, very strong club, that Bay of Plenty region. They've dominated the sport for the last few years, and just with the current situation, we're not having a big, strong contingent up from the other real hub of paddling at the Alexander contingent. So we only have a few athletes up from the bottom of the South Island this year for this event. And Pippi's looking very strong, lives right on the banks of the Kaituna River, so she does get to paddle on Whitewater all the time, and the whole family's involved in Whitewater sport. We'll see older brother Michael coming down, or Michael coming down very shortly, and now we have Casey Hales on the course. Casey looking strong. Casey also represents New Zealand in canoe polo, an alternate sport where they use a different kayak and they play in swimming pools, often outside of the hours when normal public would see them, but New Zealand very good at the sport of canoe polo as well. So Casey's fit, just catching a tail there on that bollard, preventing the boats being round, and we see Pippi Ull starting to round out her finishing run as she goes through 21, and she'll sprint to that finish line. I don't know what the times are like, I haven't seen any times posted, but Pippi does a very, very nice run. So we've got Casey Hales. We'll have Jamie Wilson, the first of our under 23 athletes. She's, as I mentioned, from the Hawke's Bay. She's been training quite hard in Rotorua over her summer semester break from university. And as we can start to see now that the athletes are using less strokes, the boats are staying closer to the poles and moving downstream much more controlled and precise, and that's just a thing with experience. So we started with our young inexperienced athletes, and now we've got our more experienced athletes coming through. So we'll have Jamie Wilson, Holly Sheaf, Kalia Kulwick, River Mutton, Courtney Williams, Hannah Thomas and Luca Jones will be our finals in the women's field. And this is young Holly Sheaf now. You'll see the name written on the side of the boat. That's generally when an athlete's competed overseas, you're required to have your name and country on your boat. So Holly's obviously taken that boat overseas at some stage. She'll be followed down by Kalia Kulwick. Kalia, a very talented paddler from Canoe Slalom Bay of Plenty as well. Both been progressing from a very early age and now starting to really put down some good solid runs on these courses. Course set today by Campbell Walsh and Mike Dawson, the two New Zealand coaches. And Holly coming out of the chicken wing looking very strong, staying away from the big stoppers there, using that stopper well to get in nice and high there. Beautiful job. The less time you can spend in those upstreams, the faster your overall run is going to be. Now we can see this is a good shot. We can see the gates moving a little bit. I think that's well within the parameters of what's acceptable. And that's Kalia now starting her run, building into it. So yesterday we had the qualifications, 2 runs, the athletes and then were seeded for the semi-finals. The course was slightly different, 1 and 2 were further upstream. There'll be 6 course changes between a semi-finals course and a qualifications course. The athletes now will do the semi-final, the top 10 will go through to the final. So everybody's pushing hard to get into that top 10, make that final, and then everything is back to scratch again. The fastest paddler in the final will be the winner of the race in each class. Kalia, and who do we have now? That's River Mutton. We'll be seeing older brother Zach on the course in the men's kayak, but Rivers, she's really pushing hard. Lives on the banks of the Kaituna River as well, so she'll be no stranger to Whitewater. And they also have a lot of gates and a good little training environment there at the moment, I believe. And she's looking very strong, River, in the top part of this course. we can see Kalia now coming in, lovely, and in the top of the course we can see River. So the athletes go at 1 minute intervals. And we can see sitting in the top pool now, Courtney Williams. Courtney had a very good season of improvements last season in Europe. She was able to sneak in between all the Omicron and the COVID restrictions. Interesting to talk to the athletes wearing masks, hand sanitising, restrictions on the crowd numbers and participant numbers at events. Beautiful job there, very good demonstration of the bow rudder. The boat just spun around that paddle in one stroke. That's what we want to see. Minimum effort from the athletes and getting maximum turn and maximum acceleration. If you time the strokes right as you reach into the solid white water from the eddies and into the current, you can get a real acceleration if you can. It looks like Ruby's had a bit of difficulty there. She's broken out above that gate. Yeah, there's Courtney now. You'll notice the athletes all have lovely coloured boats. They will choose their colour schemes. Some have personal significance to them, some they just get it because it looks good. And all the boats are a minimum weight, a minimum length and a minimum width. So the boats do have a fairly restrictive set of compliance that they have to be in, and they will be all checked as they go through. Hannah Thomas on the course, one of the big improvers from last season, and be really looking to push hard to challenge Luca Jones as the dominant Kiwi paddler at the moment. She's looking very strong, very aggressive paddler, Hannah. She's paddling in both the kayak class and the C1 class, and that was a great job. Be interesting to see. The athletes only need to get their whole head and part of their boat through the gate, so they don't have to have everything going in a straight line. So we saw Hannah doing a classic head bob. Whether that was intentional or she was slightly offline, I'm not sure. But the water's slowing down now and the athletes have to develop their own speed and pull hard, and that's very hard at the end of the course when your forearms are burning and you're breathing very, very hard. That was Courtney Williams finishing her run, and Hannah's looking like she's on a flyer. She is looking very, very tight and aggressive on the poles. And now we have Luca Jones, of course, needs no introduction. Olympic silver medalist, world ranked #2, was the most consistent paddler in last year's World Cups. Was never outside of the top 10 in the World Cups. And podiumed several times. Very strong athlete. And here's Hannah. You can see a great shot there of the water coming back up through the gates. So if the athletes are able to, the more experienced athletes are able to use that water to their advantage, catch it with the paddle, and that will do the work for them. Yeah, we've got live results coming in. And let's see what we've got at the moment. We've got Hannah Thomas with a blistering 1:02 time. Currently provisional result in the front of Courtney Williams, who, though was paddling very well, has picked up a couple of penalties in her runs, a couple of those 2-second penalties we talked about. So we'll see how Luca Jones goes, and her runs are going quite well. She's looking like she's got the fastest split in the top part of the course. And pushes off the wall, perfectly legitimate technique, the punt from the wall, something that's developed very much through with the artificial courses. A lovely sweep exit, and look, a very, very strong athlete. I'd just like to say there we see another judge in the background, and a big thank you to all our judges. The sport's very intense on judging and timing. We have the officials collating the results, adding the penalties, and we'll see that time by Jones goes down with a 99.32. So provisionally we have Luca Jones, Hannah Thomas, Courtney Williams, Jamie Wilson putting in a very good performance and currently ranked in 4th, just ahead of Rivi Mutton and Pippi, all Casey Hales, Eva Gassoni, Carly Kulwak, Eva Romberg, Grace Dooney. Gabby Lola here also putting in quite a solid performance, catching a few penalties. She'll need to address that on her second run. But that was some fine paddling by the young ladies. And we'll be moving into the men's C1 class momentarily. And that's in about 5 minutes time. We'll just have a break. The judges get a chance to have a drink, have a little break. check all the radios, check all the communications. The results will be posted. The athletes have 10 minutes in which to check their results, make sure they're all happy that any penalties they were awarded were legitimate penalties. There is sometimes mistakes, but very, very rarely. And so they get a chance to look at that. We can see the gates moving, not moving too much, which is great. The event's running very, very smoothly. Full credit to the event organisers and all those judges. As I said, many of the judges are parents. They sit there on the side of the bank and they judge the event without being able to watch their own children competing. Once again, big thank you to the ICF for their support, Victor Wero for their support, Grassroots also supporting the sport of canoe slalom, and big thank you to Canoe Racing New Zealand who are hosting the event. Canoe Slalom New Zealand who are hosting the event. So here we are on the side of the Southern Motorway. The Victor Wero Whitewater Park is a feature as you come in. You see it out of a plane as you land into Auckland Airport. Many of the international athletes have come here to train in past years, so it's pretty cool to fly over and look down and see what you've travelled all this way to do. And people driving up and down that Southern Motorway get to see the course each day. They generally don't get to see the athletes training. They're generally here very early in the morning or late in the evening. Yeah, so I'm just going to take a wee break, going to go out, have a quick assess of conditions. I'm sitting in a nice sheltered van here, it's pretty nice, so I'll just take a quick 5-minute break and come back with the second session, which will be the men's C1, and we'll be looking very much to see the performance of Finn Anderson and Oliver Puckner. Not to discount the efforts of the younger guys, but those two guys will be racing very hard for perhaps the victory this weekend. Back in 5. rescue at gate 2. Some of these young athletes, they come out of the blocks so excited, don't really build into the run as you'll see the more experienced athletes do. So that is paddler Cole Anderson. We'll see his older brother Finn as well, both electing to be C1s. Paddling only on the left hand side is young Cole, so he'd be a left-handed C1 paddler. And both Anderson boys looking quite strong. As I mentioned before, the C1 paddlers, the athletes actually kneel in their boats. Very interesting inside that spray deck. They have a strap arrangement. They're almost like a seat belt where they're strapped into the boat. Very intimidating when you first go if you can't roll. You feel trapped in the boat. So we've got Cole Anderson on the course. As I said, we'll be working our way through to the more experienced paddlers, the paddlers that did a little bit better yesterday. We've got James Senior on the course now. Paddler 23, another left-hander. We're seeing a dominance of left-handers. We saw earlier on with the demo runner Sean Higgins, legend in New Zealand C1 paddling, also a left-hander. The rival between Sean Higgins and Ben Gibb is both of them retired, leaving the gates open for some of these young athletes. So the opportunities are there for them, the senior team spots, even though they're only young. And what have we got? So the athletes in the C1 class, some will be what we call switches and others will keep the paddle in the same hand and do this. This is called a cross bow, where they reach across the boat. So Finn obviously doesn't like to change hands, whereas we'll see some of the other athletes will swap the paddle in their hands, and the timing of that looks very, very impressive. Blair Ashton now about to attack the course, and look at that, he will attack the course. Another left-hander, 3 left-handers in a row. Cross bow. And it looks like the time to beat currently is a 1:30 in the C1 class, but I suspect we'll see something 20 seconds perhaps faster than that by the more experienced guys. We've just got our young juniors going down at the moment. Lovely job by Blair there. Blair's building this run very nicely. He's using the water well. Not quite caught that pillow to fire himself in there, but he's got into the eddy nicely and comes out. Another athlete that's electing not to switch, change hands, that is on the paddle. He's working hard. So some moves favour the left-hander, this upstream here particularly, and others favour a right-hander. And another left-hander, here we go. We haven't had a right-hander on the course so far. And yeah, so young Finn Anderson on the course. Finn actually works at the Victor Wero course, and James Senior has now boosted himself into that first position in the C1 class with a 1:14. So the time, oh, Finn's upside down. No, he's recovered well. He hasn't. He's come back up, and as I said, Finn works at the course here, so he spends a lot of time on the Whitewater. He'll be very, very familiar. This would be his home course now, and also doing a fantastic job coaching some of the young Tamaki paddle sports athletes. So he's putting a bit back into the sport as well, which is great to see. And after Finn, we'll have Oliver Puckner, and Oliver paddled very, very well yesterday. Very impressive runs in both kayak and C1. So we'll look forward to seeing what he can do on the course. Finn looking like he got a little bit caught up there, perhaps not been doing the work over the winter that we would expect. Here comes Oliver, and he knows that he could be New Zealand's top-ranked C1 paddler at the end of this event. And James Senior still holding on to that 1:14, looking strong. And Oliver firing that bow round. Oh, and he's gone in above that gate. That was a little mistake. Hopefully, won't be too time costly. And Finn's over again on a great roll. He's managed to get up, and that was a classic 2-second penalty, touching that pole as he came up. So he will have got a 2-second time penalty on that. And now he's using the water, Oliver, very well. And Oliver's over as well. What is it with these guys? We're getting a fine display of self-rescue. Oliver, oh, he's a bit aggressive there. He's got a lovely turn. He's turned himself back upstream. So we'll see what's going on here. And we see the gates are moving. I don't think the gates are moving excessively, so I think the oh, and Oliver's over yet again. I don't know what's going on out there. I wonder if perhaps one of his straps has come undone in his boat. It's very uncharacteristic errors. And now we'll see if he's the maturity of the athlete, whether he puts himself back in the driving seat and really nails the bottom half of the run, shows everybody what he's capable of. Yeah, he looks like he's back on track now and doesn't just give up, but he pushes himself hard. And it's a great shot up the course now. We can see the gates are moving a little bit with that cyclone coming in, but still not looking too bad. It looks like a real forest from this angle here, so the athletes coming down, that's what they see as well. But they'll have a plan in their mind, and not only do they have the gates, they'll have what strokes and where they need to be between the gates as well. So there may only be 22 gates on the course, but the actual positions they need to be on that course as they work their way down are far more defined. And here comes Oliver with a lovely push and a switch. Switches to the right hand side there, so it was a lovely time switch down through there. And that's a lovely finish to a run that had certainly had some issues as we went through. So how are we going results wise? We're going to have a small break now, and then we're going to go into the women's C1 class, which was just a new class at the last Olympics. Luca Jones, of course, represented New Zealand in both kayak and C1, a very accomplished athlete in both. And we'll have a great little race with just a few of our women. We'll have Kalia Kulwick, Luca Jones and Hannah Thomas. Hannah paddling very, very well in the C1 at the moment. We saw her paddling very well in the kayak. So those two, they do train together. They're very supportive, the team amongst themselves, which is great. And following the women's C1, we'll move straight into the men's kayak, the biggest field. We'll be starting with the under 18s and finishing with the open. So we'll see a progression of paddlers there. We've got some very good up and coming paddlers. We'll see early on, we'll see Callum Aitken. I'm looking at the start list. We'll see Callum Aitken and Di Edwards will be some of our first runners, two very experienced and very accomplished paddlers who had all difficulties yesterday in qualification, but I'm sure we'll see something pretty good come out of those two guys early on and set the standard for the young guys to chase. Just going to go down, we'll go quiet for 2 minutes, and then we'll come back with the women's C1 class. I'll be back shortly. And Holly using that water to zip across. And she'll be followed down by Rosie Rex. You see Holly in the chicken wing, does quite a nice job, gets the water to do the bit of the work. Good body rotation, like any sport. The boat, when you're driving, riding your bike, wherever your head's looking, that's where you're going to end up going. And so body rotation, very, very important. That's Holly Sheaf, number 8. And now we're going on our second runner down the course. And the second runner down the course is Rosie Rex. And yeah, we're starting to see, I look down around the course and we can see some of the big guns rolling in now. Apparently Callum Gilbert's arrived at the course. And Finn Butcher, so the top 2 men who will be running last at the end of the day have started to arrive, so we know that the event is running to schedule. Rosie Rex looking good. Looks like they've spoken to their coaches, these young girls, between the runs and got some instruction. Of course, this is their second run on the course, not perhaps having the experience to assess a course just from the bank. Canoe slalom is a very different sport in some respects. You only get to look at the course, you don't get to actually paddle on the course. You look at it from the sides before attempting it, and that's where experience plays such a big part in the whole sport. Isabel Bloor now on the course. Yeah, so young Isabella, she's come out of there quite well, going really nice and wide, staying away from the Whitewater and setting herself up early. Rosie Rex still out there on the course, looking very smooth and controlled. Lovely sweep into gate 14. Catches that water very well with what's called a bow rudder stroke, the nice vertical stroke. Zita Lechner, the local paddler, paddles on the course here quite a lot. She's transitioning from being traditionally a sprint paddler. Former Hungarian national, now electing to live in New Zealand. Hungary, the sport of canoeing, is the #1 sport. So not so much the whitewater variety, which she's really enjoying, and has aspirations of perhaps representing Hungary in the whitewater context as well as the sprint context, which would be great. But still got a ways to go by her own admission. She's still learning the sport. Nicely done, uses the water very, very well to get into gate 9. One of the trickier moves on the course. And we see the gate judge in the back signal the 2-second time penalty. She'll be followed down by Gabby, Lola here. So the two Tamaki Paddle Sports clubs. Here comes Gabby now. Always distinctive in the green boat. Gabby had quite a solid run, just the wheels fell off in one small section, so she'll know what to do to build on that. And look at that, lovely, that's the best we've seen that. Oh, very, very close. As I said before, the athletes must get their whole head and part of their boat through the gate. She was just a little bit tight on there. Everybody cutting it fine. And Gabby perhaps not done quite so well there. She's having to paddle back up through there. And Zita coming down through her bottom part of the course into the main drop, bang, down there into gate 18, the upstream. You want to drive in really, really hard, get into that water, and you'll see as soon as you hit that water, the athletes zoom up the river. Got to get back to the other side to get back over for 19, 20, 21, the last 3 gates of the course. And now we have Grace Dooney from the Hawke's Bay. Starting to elects to start wide on the left hand side of the course, comes back round. Lovely job. A little bit low in those upstreams. We'll see, as we saw in the first runs, in the semi-final runs, we see as the athletes get better and better, they get closer and closer to those poles, so the margins Very, very tight. Oh, and making the same mistake as Gabby Lola here. Maybe the athletes are being a little bit disrupted by the wind. I don't think it's too bad at this stage, but maybe they're seeing something slightly different from water level. Yes, and then Gabby's just drifting down the course now. Perhaps expended a bit of energy with having to go back up a couple of times. Really worked hard. It's a bit of sun coming out through the clouds. The wind dies momentarily and the sun comes out. Of course, rain doesn't affect slalom athletes as much as some sports. They're always going to get wet anyway. Down. She's very experienced at this section of the course. Look at that, beautifully down there, timed the stroke wonderfully. Now she's on the fast current, just going to wind out this run. And there's Grace Dooney. She's obviously had a few technical problems on the course as well. But the best thing about these girls is they don't give up. They get stuck in, they go back for any gates they've struggled with, as we've just seen there. That's good, showing good determination and good boat control. And Grace into the second to last upstream, the last upstream from gate 18. Quite an intimidating drop from water level, close to the bollards, probably a little close to the bollards. We would have seen the boat bounce and push away from the gate. You want to be close, but you still want to have the bow, the front of the boat driving towards the gate. So a little bit offline there, that's cost her a bit of time. And looking in the warm-up, pool, who have we got coming down in the warm-up pool? And the warm-up pool now we have Eva Romberg. Another one of those young Hawke's Bay athletes. So this is it's kayak. These are the finalists. These were the top 10. The previous runners were what we call the B final. And the reason we're having this at this particular event is this is a selection race for New Zealand teams, in the hope that perhaps we will be able to travel freely to compete in the European summer and race in the World Championships. Race Championships scheduled for Slovakia, I believe, for juniors this year. So we have Eva Romberg, qualified 10th for the final. Will she be able to improve on that, put down a solid time, and all the other athletes? Gets a big kick from the tail there. That is nice. Oh, that'll be a 2-second time penalty. Not the best way to start your final. Oh, and just going a little bit wide. We've seen so many athletes get caught by that today, particularly in these junior classes, the less experienced. She's done well. She's got back online. The race and the run is never over until it's over. Yes, and we look up the course. We can see a bit of gate movement, but I suspect that's the gate that Eva hit herself. And the athletes, knowing that this is an all-out only run that counts, the previous runs count for nothing now, they will be going very hard, and we'll see probably a few more mistakes made. Out of 9 into that tricky Whitewater, getting caught a little bit there. Yes, back of the boat. Sometimes they get surprised by where the boat ends up. Kalia Kulwick from Canoe Slalom Bay of Plenty, also an athlete that's put in quite a bit of work over the winter period. You'll see the black stripes on Carlia's boat on the back of the boat. Yesterday in qualifications, she actually hit the side and put a big crack in the back of her boat. So last night, she was working hard to get that boat fixed and waterproof. Athletes take great pride in their boats. They're all custom fitted. And Eva Romberg, let's see how she's looking time-wise. So Holly Sheaf put down a pretty solid time with that 1:34.16. So in her division, she is currently the leader. Isabella Bloor had a little accident and was unable to ride herself. And as we watch Eva come down the course now. There's Carlia coming into gate 14. We can see the gate starting to move a little bit more than what we saw in the morning session now. Oh, and Carlia's got the water kicked her over a little bit further than she wanted to go for that gate 16. The athletes opting to take that left-hand line at the start of the course. Eva Casconi on the course now, not to be confused with the previous Eva from Hawke's Bay. This one's from Canoe Slalom Bay of Plenty. And she looks like she's doing a good job making her way down the course. Lovely turn there, needs to turn to get that bow back. Oh, electing for a spin, so that's perfectly legitimate tactic. As long as the athletes, they can go through the gate and either and getting caught by that Whitewater little stopper there, spending a bit of time there. Only looking very, very nice through that tricky 9 sequence. And this 10-11's caught several people out. You want to get across really fast into that other upstream. She's done this very well, used the Whitewater very well. So not only do the athletes have to be fit, they have to have really good technical skills, but also be able to read the Whitewater and know what the Whitewater is going to do to their boats. Now we have Casey Hales from the Hawke's Bay, although I believe currently residing in Palmerston North studying. A lot of our young athletes make that transition. Very difficult to transition. They leave home, they go to university, they're still trying to train, study, often living in flats, having to look after themselves a little bit more. Quite difficult for that first year till they get things sorted. And we generally see their improvements in their performance. And Casey's looking very strong. As I said before, New Zealand Canoe Polo member, so she'll be fit. Spending a lot of time, perhaps not as much time on the Whitewater, but a lot of time in a boat and dropping a little bit low there, but still managing to make the eddy so she can come back up. It just takes a bit of extra time. Followed down by, you can see the athletes are tired now. They're pulling hard on the paddle. The boat's not really moving forward. Now working really hard, and then they've still got the sprint down to break that finish beam. And what are we looking at? Now it looks like Eva Cassoni has put down a 185. A great time for Buell on the course. There's a great history in Whitewater. Both parents involved in Whitewater. Kayaking of some form, not so much slalom, but rafting, recreational paddling. Great job by Casey there into gate 18. She's done that very smoothly. So we have cameras in the bottom and the top of the course, so we're often getting caught. I don't know We missed there what happened with Pippi, but obviously she's not ended up where she's wanted. And very experienced whitewater paddler, just fairly new to the sport of slalom, so some of the subtleties not quite there. Great catch on the second stopper there to come back up to gate 9. So these, as I said, this is a winner-take-all race now, so they're all pushing very, very hard, and we are going to see a few more mistakes. And we have Rivi Mutton on the course. So another athlete from Rotorua, Okiri Falls. Rivi looking very smooth and controlled. She's young, but she has got quite a bit of experience at racing and does paddle a lot of gates and whitewater down in her hometown there. So here we go into the chicken wing, drops a little bit, but probably the best we've seen it done. And once we have Rivi, we'll have Jamie Wilson, Courtney Williams, Hannah Thomas and Luca Jones. They will round out our final. Our current race leader is Carlia Coolwick, so she'll be sitting there going, this is all good, as the other athletes come down after her and they make small mistakes. So she managed to put down quite a solid time, and Rivi's looking very, very smooth though. I think this is building to be a very nice run. Could be a competitive run if she can hold it together. Beautifully done there, gets the boat turned back nice and early, uses the whitewater to get across the river again. Into gate 17. The big sweep with the gates are starting to move a little bit down that bottom part of the course now. So 1 minute intervals. We've got Jamie Wilson from Hawke's Bay on the course. She qualified for this final in 4th position. Rivi Mutton just went down in front of her, put down a very solid time. Jamie will have seen Rivi's run in the top of the course and know that she's going to have to put a really, really solid run down to be competitive as well. She's doing that very nicely, using the whitewater, fantastic. Economy of strokes, and the boat's moving forward all the time. Look at that, that's very nice. Very, very good control of the edges of the boat and keeping the boat in the right place. Down, Rivi Mutton put down a great run, a 1:17.82 and 4 seconds penalty is 1:21.82. That's a stormer, that's thrown her right into the lead. So what's the young Wilson athlete got? He moves towards gate 14. Spent the summer training in Rotorua, did a lot of training with River, I believe, so sort of great mates. They would spend a lot of time together, so they should be reasonably close time-wise. And now we move into the senior women. We've got Courtney Williams on the course. I think realistically the race for the medals will be Courtney Williams, Hannah Thomas and Luca Jones. Just a little bit more experience. They've had a couple of international seasons overseas under their belts. And Courtney looking very strong and very fit. She paddled very well yesterday, looked very much in control and looked a lot sharper than we've seen her looking for a while. Goes to the spin move there and just keeps the boat moving. We've got young Jamie Wilson on the course now. And there's Courtney, lovely job there. Jamie Wilson still out there on the course. Looks like she may have had some difficulties. And you've just got a great flash there at the bottom of Courtney's boat. You can see the little fins. Some athletes opting to race with fins similar to a surfboard, but a little smaller. They believe that gives the boat better grip in those upstreams. Great, nice turn by Courtney there. Only having to get the head through the gate, she's done that very well. And now she is really pushing hard. As I said, it's winner take all this last run, so these are the medal positions being competed for. And Courtney's done that before. Nice and deep in there, manages to get out, and out of the blocks comes Hannah Thomas. As I said, I think the medals are going to be decided between these three athletes. Hannah made great improvements after a strong European season. She's racing in both the C1 and kayak class. Renowned for being very aggressive in attacking the course, and she's brought a certain finesse this season to her paddling. She seems to slice the paddle a little more than she has in the past, using the edges of the boat, and looking very strong. Courtney Williams storms into first position with a 106.91 plus 2 seconds of penalties. Provisional results only, pushing Ruby Mutton back into second place. Wilson now drops back down to fourth. I suspect some of these athletes, the movement of the gates might be starting to play on their minds a little bit, but not affecting Courtney Williams. She's trained on this course many times. We all know the sou'wester at Wero can make the gates move around. And look at Hannah Thomas go. She is very focused. And she's another one that trains here a lot. She'll know what the wind does. And a little punt off the wall. Oh, gets a bad kick. And that's two bad kicks in a row. That's how quickly a fantastic run can drop. She's only got to come out of the blocks there, but she's putting down a really solid time. And now we have Luca Jones, of course, needs no introduction. New Zealand's top women's kayaker for quite some time in the sport of canoe slalom. Ranked number 2 in the world last season. Didn't have the best of Olympics, but did get several podiums on the World Cups throughout the season, and as I said, was ranked number 2 after Jess Fox in Australia. Unfortunately, this year the Aussies unable to come and compete, which is a regular fixture for them. So Luca just able to push herself. Jones doing a great job here. She's also paddled here a lot. And Courtney Williams has held off a very, very strong challenge from Hannah Thomas. So currently, provisionally, we have Courtney Williams with the 108.91, holding that first position. Hannah Thomas with a 112.78 in second. And Ruby Mutton with the 121.82. And look at the gates now. This is getting to be a little bit of a challenge. Jones, a mentally strong athlete. She'll know what she needs to do. She'll use her experience. She'll know to keep well away from the poles, keep herself in the middle of the gates, and she's doing that, working hard through. And the gates are slowed, not moving so much now, but we are getting quite severe wind gusts out on the course now for those people who aren't here. And we look at that time. I'm waiting to see the time come up for Luca Jones. We're certainly having some issues. You can see the wind gusts coming in. The wind is definitely getting stronger here. I can see the course officials and the head judge, and I believe a couple of the coaches are starting to congregate and perhaps looking at this not only from a fair race point of view, but perhaps also from a safety point of view for the event. But it is very difficult for these guys to make the decision. The gust comes, the wind moves a lot, and then we'll have 5-6 minutes where nothing moves. We can see now the cameras are getting blown around. So this is a big weather event. I believe, I haven't had it confirmed, but I believe the Auckland Harbour Bridge may have been closed this morning for a period. It may still be closed because of the high wind gusts. So the wind is changing direction, and that's why the gates are being affected so much. The nor'easter we had earlier this morning have changed to a westerly, and that is not a favourable wind for the race out here. So the athletes who have been down the course have done very, very well, and conditions have certainly got more challenging as the day goes on. It'll be very interesting to see what happens going forward. At the moment, as I said, we can see everybody getting together and they're having a meeting about whether they consider the conditions fair and equitable, and whether they consider the conditions safe. I suspect extreme racing this afternoon, they will not be launching from the bridge, not from the ramp on the bridge for extreme racing. That would definitely be pushing the limits, and so we will see. Currently we're just looking at slalom. Extreme not as affected by the winds. Yeah, we can see the ramp now as we see the some athlete walking across the bridge. This is the ramp that the athletes would launch from for the extreme, so they are in quite an exposed position. You would have 4 athletes on that ramp all dropping down at the same time into that whitewater, and that is a little bit of a concern safety wise. One of the safety issues we're talking about, you can see on the screen there an athlete carrying their boat up. These boats weigh 9 kilos for a men's kayak, for all the kayaks. And here you can see the athlete fighting with his boat now. So people are a bit worried about where they store their boats. If they get caught by the wind, what's going to happen? You need to keep that boat down low to the ground. And we don't want someone jumping in and their boat flying away. We see Oliver Buchner lined up for his final run. Perhaps not the position he expected to find himself in, leading the charge for the finals, but well done by young James Senior in the semi-finals. He took that semi-final out, took it to the senior boys, no pun intended there, but he took it to the more experienced athletes, and now Oliver finds himself leading the charge, leading the field out. He'll be followed down by Cole Anderson and then Finn Anderson. No rivalry between those two brothers, of course. Bragging rights on the line for the New Zealand Open for the year. Blair Ashton and then Ashton Blair and then James Senior will make up our 5 finalists. We're just waiting for Oliver to get the go-ahead from the judges and the timekeepers. Oliver sitting there waiting for the all clear. He's being told to back up a little bit to move out of the start blocks. I believe we may have had a call from the chief official. I believe racing may have been cancelled. Safety concerns obviously at a premium here, but also the fact, does it become a fair race if one athlete gets to go down the course and the gates are in the position set by the course designers, and the wind moves the gates temporarily with the poles, swing of the poles, a bit of foam, the foam in the water. Yeah, you can start to see those gates are very much moving now, and so this has become a wind affected event, and we are really at the extreme end of what would be considered a fair event. And I think that the event organisers have made a good decision to say that the event may not be a fair event. Okay, so the event has officially been called off. I'd just like to take this opportunity once again to thank all the sponsors. So, of course, main sponsors, Grassroots, Lumber One, and Victor Wero. They have all contributed to making this a good event. Real Accounting as well. Yeah. So I'm Okay, so I'm going to leave for a few minutes. I'm going to get a little bit of clarification on this. I have a dual role here. I'm doing a bit of commentary. I'm also the chair of selectors, so we'd like to know some clarification of what's going on going forward. So I'm just going to leave you for a minute, but you can look and you can see for yourself that wind is fairly extreme, even for those people not so familiar with canoe slalom, you can see those poles are moving around a lot. I'll be back in 5. In the New Zealand Open is now cancelled, so I believe the results will stand for the women's kayak class, but the other classes will not be continuing to race. With the cancellation of racing, you see all the athletes are just pretty keen to get out there on the water, so I believe it's just going to be what we would call an open practice session for the safety of the judges and their equipment. They have all been withdrawn from the course. The poles will stay in position. The athletes can all paddle on the course and enjoy this. The water's been booked and paid for, so the athletes can now use this as an opportunity to get out there and train and have some fun, really enjoy themselves out there. Very disappointing for some of those athletes who have put in a lot of work to build towards this race, but in saying that, safety first and a fair race first, and it definitely was not going to be a fair race. So well done by the officials. Good work to them, and a big thank you to all those judges, officials, timekeepers, and all those people who have helped make the race work really well. Big thanks down to the guys in boat scrutineering and everybody else who's helped. And once again to those sponsors, Lumber One, Grassroots, Victor Wero, Real Accounting, Olympic Solidarity, High Performance Sport New Zealand, and Canoe Racing New Zealand, and all that they've brought to this event. So big thank you, and a big sign off from me and Mercer. And hopefully we'll see you next year in a non-COVID related event where we'll have a full international field for the New Zealand Open, and it will be Oceania Champs in New Zealand again next year. Over and out.